All right, we're going to get started in just a couple minutes. Those of you joining us from the live stream, we're so grateful to have you. We imagine you here. We used to have like the pictures. Paul, why don't you start us off with a little noodling, as you say. All right, we'll begin, and I'm so grateful to have Harvey Horowitz over here with me. Cantor is a little bit under the weather, nothing too bad, but it's wonderful to team up with Harvey. He's going to bring, and he and Paul will really bring a lot to our service. We're going to start with Hine Matov. I know a lot of you know that very well. It's on page 128.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
How wonderful it is for family, synagogue family, real family, to be together in this way on this Shabbat. I'd like to invite over Bruce Chorus, who is going to offer our welcome. I always have to say, start with the welcome.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
For those of you here in the room with us tonight, and those of you watching on the live stream, I just want to address something that's been coming up lately. I have been asked a couple of times recently, and I'm sure other leaders of the temple have as well, if we are considering going back to just a live stream. Obviously, we are watching what's going on out there. We're watching it just like you guys are. We're watching the numbers, we're watching the recommendations and all of that. And no, we are not planning to go back to live stream only. We are going to continue to assess the situation and always put your safety first, but we also recognize your needs. And coming to services on Friday night is important for people. Not everyone is doing it. There are people that are staying away. Those of you that are watching out there right now. And we respect that. It's a choice that you guys are going to make. But as long as we possibly can, we're going to give you this option to be able to come in person. Again, we're going to watch the situation. Things are changing. But I just want you to know that this is our plan. And anytime you have questions about this, anytime you want to discuss it, please feel free to reach out to myself or the rabbi or the cantor or Joanne or Todd. We're here to talk to you about it anytime you need. So, Shabbat Shalom. I'll look forward to a very nice service tonight. Harvey's voice is a few octaves lower than the cantor's. Just a little. And I'll be back later with the announcements. We have a lot of stuff coming up in the next couple of weeks. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Bruce. And we do check in regularly as a staff and as an exec board to try to assess what's going on. It's really scary times, and if at any time we felt there was a danger here, we would shut down our operations and to move to live stream. And as I told Cantor and Joanne in our discussions this week, we've done everything during this 20 months or so. I think Ellen and I were kind of counting it out, about 20 months. So we are prepared as much as you can be. Talk about preparations. How many of you have had a plan, scrapped the plan, started over again? How many of you that feels like a normal, everyday occurrence, right? There's a wonderful thing where you feel the pressure to do something, and then you get a little tired and a little groggy, and you say, well, maybe it could wait. So I wrote this poem, which is all about making plans, and you know what God does when you make plans, right?
Laughs.
Laughs, exactly. It's called God laughing. There will come a time when you, encased in sleep, want only to neglect the plans you set when earlier awake, that seem so immediately pressing, but now feel like a faraway dream you had in another place you once inhabited as another you who cared for plans that once were set, encased in sleep in a time that will yet come. So if you ever feel that way. And then just for some laughs, I was putting together some tongue twisters. These are a couple for Shabbat, and we're going to print some in the newsletter, so if you want to try them out on occasion. Apparently I put them on our rabbinic listserv, and apparently people are already trying them out. Okay, so this one goes. Restless Ryan's always rushing, running round like rooster clucking. When will Ryan's rushing stop? Ryan rests when it's Shabbat. And this one's even harder here. Zaftig, that means heavy. Zaftig Zadie singing Zemmers asked for Zeb to bring his klezmers. Klezmer band playing notes while Zaftig Zadie sings Zemirot. That's, for those of you not familiar, one of the joys of Shabbat is sitting around the table and singing. It's just, if you've never experienced that, it's really one of the wonderful things, and they call them Zemmers. Zadie is another word for grandfather. Okay, we are ready now to light our candles. Do we have anyone who has a special occasion that would like to light our candles today? It's going to have to be Rabbi. Oh, do we have? Lily, do you want to light? Wonderful. Okay. Not only being we got Lil here, and what's your friend's name? Megan. Lil and Megan are going to light our candles. It's on page 120.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
May the candles light our way on Shabbat. Lil, if you could just lift up the cup there. We're going to turn to Kaddish on page 123.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit ki hu yom techila lemikra'ei kodesh zecher litziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta v'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha bi'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat.
Amen. time where that cup is full and we are done with the pandemic. L'chaim. Thank you, Lel and Megan. Really appreciate it. Yeah. Well, one day, I think, we have all sorts of metaphors with the cup. Often we overfill it, actually, at the Shabbat table. That's part of the reason why there's a little tray underneath it, because our happiness should be overflowing. But I feel like it's just kind of a perfect metaphor for the time that we're in. And one day we will be back to a time where we can fill our cups, feel comfortable, and feel the full happiness of being together and in community. We're going to welcome in Shabbat on page 138 with L'cha Dodi. And Harvey has picked out his favorite one. We're going to sing the first and the last verses, 1 and 9. On the 9th verse, we rise, face the doorway, or whatever doorway you have, and we bow to the Shabbat bride as she enters, and we welcome each other with our waving.
Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. La 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 la. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmiyanu el hamyuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shem u'letiferet v'litila la 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 la, Lecha dodi, likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, Gam besimcha u'v'tzola, Toch emunei am segula. Boi chala la la.
We welcome one another with our waves.
Likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela.
We remain standing for the Baruch Hu, our call to prayer and our call of community, page 146.
Baruch Hu et Adonai hamevorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vahed.
Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed.
And we continue page 150. Think about all the love that's in our room, love for one another and for God.
Ahavat olam bet Yisrael, Amecha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shochbeinu v'kumeinu, nasiach b'chukecha, v'nishmat b'divray Toratecha, u'v'mitzvotecha, le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu, ve'orech yameinu, uvahem nege yomam v'layla, v'yahavatecha al tasir mimenu liolamim. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Amen. Page 152, we remain standing for the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai וכבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד.
You may be seated, page 154.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך. וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך. וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
And we continue now to the Michamocha on page 158. And I was explaining on Sunday to the kids how this is there's a secret embedded. And Harvey, why don't you tell us, what's the secret that Hanukkah is included?
You're thinking of the first letters of Mi Chamocha Ba'elim Adonai. You put the first letters together, you get Maccabee. And Judah was known as Judah Maccabee.
Right, you can see the Mem, the Kaf, the Bet, and the Yud spell Maccabee, and that is where they got their name from. And it also means hammer. So we continue with the crossing of the sea or the Maccabee Revolution, your choice.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Nora tehilot osefele, nora tehilot osefele. Malchutecha ra'u b'vanecha, bokei hayam לפני משה ומרים, זה אלי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך, לעולם ועד. ונאמר, כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
Let's read together on page 159. Sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come, the song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more, the song of a world redeemed, the song of peace. We're going to continue with the Amidah, the standing or the Tefillah. It starts on page 164. I invite you to rise and take an opportunity, those of you that able or whose custom it is. And after you have your silent prayers, you may be seated.
Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
All right, we're going to turn now to our healing prayers, page 371. And we do have a lot of people on our list, people that we're thinking about. I'm going to read our list here, and if you have other names that you'd like to offer, just raise your hand and we'll go around. And those of you joining us virtually, just put your names or say your names to yourself. Ebony Burse, we're thinking as a Shabbat Shalom community of Ebony Burse, Angie Byrnes, Ebony Burse, I guess that's double, Noah Camacho, Christopher Crawford, Arthur Dizelke, Sue Frank, Michael Getting, Nancy Hersbrunn, Paula Jones, Gail Lewis, Diane Lynch, Larry Max, Jean McGarry, Helene Mesh, Ida Nevler, Cheryl Rossi, Brandon Ryan, Ron Sellers, Don Sherman, Mimi Shapiro, Christopher Smith, Anita Wiesel, Karen Weissman. Well, I think we're all good at this point, right? Yeah. And Jeffrey Winnick, Dr. Peter Winkelstein, Mark Yablin, Elizabeth Jeezy Yeager, and Christine Zalowiski, Chana Ezra Ben Shuel, and Penina Sarah Bat Chana. We take all those names into our hearts as we sing the Misha Berach.
Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Le'imotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
A complete healing of body and soul. We send out our good wishes and hope they reach where they need to go, and that person or people have that extra strength to push through when they most need it. And we say Amen. So we are going to be looking now and reading from one of the most emotional parts of the Torah. I would say of any scene in the entire Torah, what we're about to read is the most emotional. And you might say, well, what about the crossing of the sea that we'll be doing in a month or two? What about the birth of creation? What about Lech Lecha, when Abraham and Sarah leaves? What about Moses' death? Now, I think that the most emotional scene is the beginning of this week's Torah portion, Vayigash, where Joseph's brothers finally come to him, and Joseph finally reveals himself. And I'm going to read this scene, which still, unbelievably, to this day, thousands of years later, can cause people to tear up. It's that emotional. Just imagine Joseph has been estranged for his family for many years at this point, and he's very angry, and his family doesn't even know he's alive, even as they're talking to him, and he finally is about to share the words. Okay, so this is what it says in chapter 45, verse 1. And remember, he is in charge of Pharaoh's court here. Joseph could no longer restrain himself before all who were standing in attendance on him. So he cried, "Send everyone away from me," so that no one else was there when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. He gave voice to a loud wail, and the Egyptians heard, Pharaoh's palace heard. Joseph then said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father really alive?" That moment where he doesn't know anything about what's happened to his family, and finally he understands that he can make restitution, that his brothers can make restitution, both to each other and to his father. And this feeling of estrangement is unfortunately a very familiar feeling. I've encountered it many, many, many times in my rabbinic work, and it's one of the things I've never talked about publicly, but I noticed, and it hurts me. And I wanted to take time tonight to really address it a little bit. I think it's one of those issues that's very much under the radar, like so many issues, and that it's really important that we talk about it so that people that are feeling estranged from their families or have family members that are estranged from them feel that they know this is not an unusual occurrence, but actually a very familiar one. So I looked it up because I was curious. Just anecdotally, I have had many times where I get the funeral list from one of the funeral homes, and I'm told about some of the relatives, but one or two relatives on the list that are listed under children or sibling, whatever it is, are not mentioned or are not part of the discussion. Sometimes it's been so bad we've had to call the police. I can think of one occasion where that had to happen. But many times we just have to, it's a really precarious thing. How do we kind of navigate these moments? And again, I think that they're familiar. So I looked it up, and there was actually a study done in 2015. And of they only had like 400 participants in the study. 43% of the participants reported experiencing a definite estrangement in their family lives. The good news is that I think 46% of these estrangements only last a few years. But that means 54% or so of these estrangements last a very long time. To put it in perspective, the authors of this study compared it to divorce, and they actually said it's likely just as large an issue in society or perhaps larger. So just get your hand around this. I saw another study that said something over 70 million Americans face this at any one time. 70 million people have some sort of estrangement in their life. One of the things that was said in one of the articles I was reading, there was a historian named Stephanie Kuntz who said this is it's very unusual in our history, in human history, because family structures up until modern times were based on mutual obligations. In other words, you and I are connected because we have to work together or there will be no food. So you can't leave. This isn't about love. This is about obligation to one another. And what happened is that in the more modern era, over the last 100 years or so, it's become about mutual understanding. That we are in relationship, not because or necessarily because we have to do something for one another, but because the relationship bond that's been set. And this is challenging. It's challenging because relationships are difficult anyways in community, in anywhere. Human beings aren't always the nicest to one another. It's challenging because of life circumstances. There are many horrific things, unfortunately, that happen within family structures, things that perhaps are unforgivable, and things that will make it very difficult. There's other issues like addiction, depression, things that make relationships complicated. And people may pull out of relationships for a whole variety of reasons. The standard, when you see it in the Jewish world, as I was thinking about it today, you usually see the type of estrangement that I've only seen once, thank God, in my career, which is the estrangement of someone doing something to marrying outside the faith or doing something that upsets the Jewish part of it. It's only happened once, and to me, I don't think it's very common, certainly not in our sphere. Thank God, because you used to, those sayings like, you are dead to me, because, you have done this thing to your faith. That generally doesn't happen so much anymore, but it should not mask the way that estrangement is something that is very common and happens for all separate and different reasons, including religious readings, but certainly not limited to it. As we think about the Joseph story, it really encapsulates so much of this. The brothers are thrown together into a much more complex situation because you have multiple wives, 4 wives, 4 different families. You have a father who tends to play favorites between the children, and you have the youngest child, Joseph, is prioritized over the older children. So there is natural jealousies that are built into the structure of this. And it's not surprising as you read from the beginning of the Joseph story that it just degrades so quickly. As soon as Joseph is given the gift of this wonderful Technicolor dream coat and his brothers are not given it, not only that, Joseph is not protected by his father. It creates this situation that is just terrible, and only through, in this case, God's intervention are we saved. I did find this wonderful poem. I was looking for different readings, and this is a poet that it's actually in the National Archives. Her name is Araceli's Gourmet. And I think it's really about the familiarity. I think it's called Second Estrangement. Please raise your hand, whomever else of you has been a child lost in a market or mall without knowing it at first, following a stranger, accidentally thinking he is yours, your family or parent, even grabbing for his hands, even calling the word you said then for father, only to see the face looking strangely down, utterly foreign, utterly not the one who loves you, you who are a bird suddenly stunned by the glass partitions of rooms, how far the world you knew, and tail and filled, finally with strangers. Just that sense of how horrific that, that experience. I had that experience. Anyone have that as a young child? The poet asks us to raise our hand. I think that's familiar. I think that's kind of that break. Suddenly everything is different. And that's what happens with an estrangement. And as I was putting together my words and thinking about it, I thought about the words warm and welcoming. This is something I mentioned in Torah Thoughts today. We often talk about our communities being warm and welcoming. We want them to be a place where people want to come into, right? So we write it. And I remember when I was researching synagogues, every single one of them, they said warm and welcoming. But I think it's something more than that. I realized as I was reading this story, the synagogue is a family. We used to call our synagogue family of families. And it's a place where we can be accepted, and we can find our family that's a little broader than our own family, and maybe find a connection. It also shows just what the risk is when we have bad communities that chase people away. When people come into a community that is supposed to be warm and welcoming, and they feel chased away, it is an estrangement, as if from their own family. And until they find, oftentimes people will come here and they'll say, we're looking for the synagogue that feels right, that is their family. They're looking for a place of safety and community. And I think this is also particularly important because of God. That God, who is absent in the Joseph story, God is supposed to work underneath the text here. But when we feel estranged from a religious community, we're estranged from God in a certain way. And that is a particularly difficult type of estrangement. I was thinking, lastly, I'd just like to conclude, I was thinking about the words and a challenge I've had over COVID with the words of the priestly blessing. Harvey and I love to recite the priestly blessing. But there is a little bit of a mystery. It's one of those things that when you say it, may God bless you and protect you. May God's light shine upon you and grant you comfort. May God lift God's face upon you and grant you peace. That last line always seemed a little bit off. What does it mean that God lifts God's face to you? I've been thinking over COVID, it means this, taking off your mask so that we can see one another in a safe way. But I was reading some commentary, and I think it's the Or Chaim, a famous commentary, that says that when God lifts God's face to you, that's because human beings have estranged themselves from God. And God is saying, it's okay, I'm still going to lift my face to you and bring you in and remove the barrier. Make that moment that we see in Joseph right here. And then how does peace fit in? And this is the most wonderful thing. He says that peace is when there's no more estrangements. I thought that was so brilliant in thinking about it. That what do we want most? Why is this story of Joseph so emotional? Because we want the barriers to be removed from one another. Those things, the things that get in the way of relationships to be removed. And this is saying, hopefully, that God will help us do that. And by doing that, it's not a normal kind of peace. It's a peace without any barriers. So I pray for all of us. May this community be wide enough to accept everyone and allow for the removal of the barriers. May we not feel estranged. And may, when we have estrangements in our families and others, may we find Joseph's brothers like Joseph did, find a reunion, and find that happiest place where we can finally be at peace with one another, because we need it. That is how peace occurs in this world, when families get along with each other. May it be so. So we're actually going to read Torah this time. It's been a little while, and it's actually been a while since we've done the opening blessings for the Torah. We were trying, Paul, what do you think? It's been ages, right? We didn't really want to sing those songs because we didn't want to bring the Torah around. But I think we did ourselves a disservice because we missed the words of the songs too. So we're going to rise. We're going to sing on 364, 366 at the top. Harvey will lead us off, and then I'll go down there and I'll be the pointer, and Harvey will be the reader.
כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים. ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, לעמו ישראל בקדושתו.
Before you leave, you know what? I thought maybe we wouldn't do them, but I feel like this is the moment that breaks the barrier, this Shema here. So I'm going to have you lead it. I'm going to go down to the Torah, and it's going to be responsibly on 366. We're not going to go around, Paul, though.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Everyone. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Everyone. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadlul Adonai iti, uneromema Shemo yachdav. Sure. In the Hertz Chumash, it's on page 169. 169. It's Genesis chapter 44, verse 18. It's labeled Vayigash. Did you want a bracha first?
Anyone have anything special they want to do this week? We'll do it together. Okay, let's try it. I'll do it as a mic. Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amin, V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. 169 in the Hertz Chumash, in the Pentateuch. 169. Amen. Vayigash elav Yehuda, vayomer bi Adoni, yedaber na avdecha, davar beoznei Adoni, val yichar apecha beavdecha, ki chamolcha kefaro. Adoni sha'al et avadav lemor, hayesh lachem av o ach. Vanomer el Adoni, yesh lanu av zaken, v'yeled zekunim katan, v'achiv meit, v'yivater hu levado le'imo, v'aviv ahevo. Vatomer el avadecha, horiduhu elai, v'asima eni alav. Vanomer el Adoni, lo yuchal hana'ar la'azov et aviv, v'azav et aviv v'ameit. Vatomer el avadecha, im lo yered, achichem hakaton, itachem lo tosifun lerot panai. Vayehi ki alinu el avdecha avi, v'naged lo et divrei Adoni. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu, Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Yesher koach.
Yesher koach to you.
Well, you can feel when we read the Torah. I feel like we come closer. You know, it feels like that moment, and you can hear the words. That was from the very beginning of the chapter where Judah still doesn't know Joseph, but he's revealing things to Joseph that really maybe he does. We actually don't know for sure. It's ambiguous. Maybe Judah at that point has figured out what's going on. All right, we are going to now turn to our closing prayers, page 586 for Aleinu. It's not enough for us just to pray. We must go out and do good things in this world. Page 586. Please rise.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, latet gedula liotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu kemishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamelachim hakadosh baruch hu.
Page 591.
V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad.
You may be seated. We turn to the Mourner's Kaddish. It's page 598. As a community, we are remembering Judith Berman, Peggy DeLong, Alan Grass, Seymour Kramer, Sheldon Reingold, Dorothy Shackman, Richard Stearns, Peter Seinman, and Annabelle Weiss, all who passed in the last month. On our yard-site list from years past, we remember the passing of Bertha S. Alderman, Joseph Baker, Bruce Baum, Laya Berdichevsky, Shifra Berdichevsky, Sidney Berzone, Rose Bukowski, Samuel Burstein, Albert Kallistein, Jacob Chazen, Louis Chertoff, Nathan Cohen, Gilbert Corris, Monroe D. Edelman, Anita Foster, Rosalind Gaben, Eva H. Gale, Nathan Galinsky, Daniel Gelman, Dr. Jacob Gilden, Benarta Glickman, Max Gross, Jacob Herr, David H. Hirsch, Henrietta Hirsch, Bertha Horowitz, Marcia Horowitz, Henry Kahn, Ada Cariff, Mary Kempner, Sylvia L. Knopf, Beatrice Kramer, Sophie Lattis, Ralph W. Levinson, Tony Lillian, Rachel Marks, Howard Mitofsky, Nathan Nyman, Matilda Nosnitsky, Dr. Lewis Pierce, Miriam Rakin Kolb, Edgar C. Revo, Molly Roth, Ruth Sachs, Ben Shack, Belle Shapiro, Adolpha Shire, Elliot Shapiro, Lester S. Simon, Anna Steinberg, Sarah Schwartz, Isidore Weiss, Ruth G. Wolkind, Gregory Wolpin, and Isaac Zisman. If you have other names, just raise your hand. All those whose custom it is to rise, the Mourner's Kaddish again, page 598.
Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah, b'yomah divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'b'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, b'agalav yizman kariv yimru amen.
Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam U'Omei Maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal Shmei Kedusha Berichu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechamata damiran b'yalma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlam rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru amen. May the one who grants harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, to all the world, and we say amen. You may be seated. Zikronam levracha. May their memories be for a blessing. I just want to, this is the 1-year anniversary of Bruce Baum. To Cindy and Wendy, our hearts go out to you. Bruce is still very much alive in our community, and we do think of him often as a community, and I know that he's having a good time up there with God, playing lots of tricks on him. I'd like to invite up Bruce Corris, our immediate past president, to offer the announcements.
Bruce probably handed him that little card he handed everyone. Remember the one that with a picture of a stool on it, like the stool you sit on. Here, my doctor asked me for a stool sample. He loved that one. Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you to Rabbi Alex, Paul Staley, and special guest baritone Harvey Horowitz for tonight's lovely service in honor of Shabbat. Thank you to our ushers tonight, Mark Nightinger and Sherry Jo Reich and Lil Duquette, the finest mother-daughter team since the Gilmore Girls. Pardon me? Megan. And Megan helped out as well, correct. Speaking of thank you to everyone who RSVP'd for the service tonight. It is continuing to be so important that we know an accurate head count for spacing, for onigs, for everything like that. So thank you for helping out with that. Shalom Ruach is coming up on Sunday night. It is back, 7 o'clock p.m. Dr. Yanina Foster leading it via Zoom. Join them for song, chant, silence, and sharing. This Thursday, Buffalo Corner Reading Series will be back. That's at 7 o'clock via Zoom. An evening of poetry this week, so everyone is welcome for that. We want to thank everyone who either volunteered or supported our final Shvetas of not just of the calendar year, but of the season, our shivering Shvetas this past Tuesday. When Diane came to pick up their meal, she said, "Are you frozen?" And I said, "I am frozen stiff. I was a Brucicle in the parking lot on Tuesday." So the Shvetas crew is taking a well-deserved break for a couple of months. And thank you always, because that has been such an important fundraiser for us and will continue to be. And we truly, truly appreciate your support. Women of Shir Shalom have a new thing coming. It is called the Timely Topics Discussion Group. They're going to meet quarterly, either via Zoom or in person if they can. And they're going to decide on a topic for each one. Each member of the group can talk about it individually. There's going to be a panel discussion at the end. It should be a really interesting thing. Jill Hamilton is honchoing it, so if you'd like to know more about it, those of you that are here in the room, talk to Jill after services. Those of you that are watching via the live stream, Jill's phone number and email have been in the email. Phone number and email address have been in the email that went out about that. Chai Club is back. We are doing a drawing every Wednesday. It began on Wednesday, December 1st. If you got tickets, you all got tickets, buy them, return them, sell them, do whatever you can with them. It's a drawing every week, and even if you win, your name goes back, your ticket goes back into the pot. So you can do very well with that. Next Friday, we're going to be back here in the sanctuary for 7 o'clock service. Before that, at 6:30, Sue Frank will be in the gift shop again. Where's Sue? There you are. Thank you for helping out with that. She and I were chatting earlier. We're working on ideas to clear out the old, get in the new. We need a good post-Hanukkah sale. Can I guilt you into doing that? Anyway. All right. Now this is really, really cool. I was so excited when I saw the email about this. The adult B'nai Mitzvah class is returning on Sunday, January 9th. That'll be from noon until 1. The email went out about it. There's a flyer on the website. If you have any questions about it, contact the rabbi. If you want to register, contact Joanne. The last one we did of those was obviously before COVID. 2 years.
This class was
This class started, didn't they?
It was supposed to be, and we canceled.
Right. This group was starting the training and then COVID put the kibosh on it. But the last one we did a couple of years ago was our largest group ever. Myra was in that one. I was fortunate enough to be the board rep on the Bima. Myra asked me in the way that Myra always asks me to do things. She said, "You're on the Bima for this one, right?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." But that was cool. And it's a wonderful thing for those of you who were not able to have one as a child, whether you've converted like some people have, or it just was never an option for you as a kid. It is a wonderful thing to take part in. I know, Mom, you did it. Who else did it? Is there anyone? Karen, you did it? Jill did it? Denise, you did it as well? So it's a really wonderful thing. So I was very excited to hear that that's back. As I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the service, we are going to continue, as we always have, to evaluate the situation. As we see that things change, we will adapt accordingly. Again, we will always put your safety first, and also being cognizant of your needs and your wishes, because that's the most important thing, to be safe, but to continue to be part of this wonderful Shir Shalom family, and for us to be able to accommodate you however we can. If you need anything at all, please feel free to reach out to the rabbi, the cantor, Joanne, Todd, or myself. We are here for you, always. If it's during off hours, like middle of the night, it's always Joanne. Other than that, we are always here for you. Shabbat Shalom, enjoy your oneg to go, and thank you again, as always, for being part of this really wonderful family. The rabbi mentioned how important it is for us to be together as a family, and I feel it every week when I'm here in this room with you guys. Shabbat Shalom.
Bruce, I didn't know I was a baritone. I sing in the key of H. But I gotta give Paul Staley a special thank you tonight. Other times when Paul was accompanying on the organ, you know, the organ has this magic dial. It can automatically transpose into whatever key the singer sings in. It can play on a key that he knows. But tonight he had to transpose everything down. And one of the keys he found, I don't think there was any white keys left. He was playing all the black keys. So I really appreciate that. And it sounded like you've been playing in those keys forever.
I just want to show you how Bruce was here. Before the service, I thought, well, maybe this is broken. It kept going down like this. And I got another one and did it. Then I realized you can't put two books, but it was. I thought it was Bruce Baum playing jokes on me.
That's what the organ does at the Riviera Theater.
Right. All right, we're going to end with Adon Olam, page 625.
Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra li'et nasa v'chefzo kol azai melech shemo nikra v'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora v'hu ho'aya v'hu hoveh Vehu yiyeh b'tifara, Vehu echad v'ein sheni, Lehamshir lo lehachbira, Beli reshit, beli tachlit, Velo ha'oz v'ha'misra, Vehu eli v'chai go'ali, B'tzur chevli b'etzara, Behu nisi umanos li, Minat kosi b'yom ekra, B'yado afkid ruchi, B'et ishan v'ya'ira, B'im ruchi geviati, Adonai li velo ira.
I'd like to invite Bruce back. He's going to levitate our challah here. Or should I say French toast? That is the best use of challah, actually. And we'll say the hamotzi together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. As As you came in peace, may you leave in peace. Please return your prayer books with the leaflet out of it to the front of the sanctuary there, and we'll say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Your goneg.